Well, greetings, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of WTF Walk the Floors. I'm Stephanie Leger with First Rate Hospitality, and I'm joined with my co host, Michèle Kline of Kline Hospitality. Hi, Michèle. How are you today?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you, Stephanie?
Doing great. We're getting into the fall spirit.
Yes, fall spirit it is. So, some of our beautiful resorts out there are gearing up to that time of the year where it gets a little busier. And there are certain things that we tend to forget to refresh the memory of our team members. And that is all about the process. So, there is an interesting topic for today, Stephanie, and I want to be enlightened with all your knowledge when it comes to our systems going down. We
Yes.
rely on technology so heavily that sometimes we forget how to do things on paper. So let's talk about that. What to do when systems go down.
Absolutely. Yes, I think this is a great topic for us to start reviewing as we're rounding down the year. But yeah, we got to making sure that we have our processes in place when things don't go according to plan. So the first thing of making sure we're having that communication. Not only to our employees, but also to our guests. We've been seeing it too with other like airlines, also too with having systems going down, and then all of a sudden the passenger isn't realizing until they are waiting to get in line and get on the plane, or while they're even in flight of realizing now things are being changed. So we want to making sure communication to our guests, but then also to our employees, so they're able to having the correct information to provide to the guest. What do you think about that?
I totally agree. And like I said before, I feel like we don't train our team as much on this. And it's important, right? So why let's touch on that. Why is it so critical to have backup plans in place?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, because stuff's going to happen, but we want to making sure with that we are understanding fully. Okay, if something is going wrong, then what's going to be the next step of action that we need to take? And it doesn't matter also too how big your property may be, or even your company, but there, or even how small. But you want to making sure that everyone is on that same page.
Yes, and in moments of crisis, because I think we can both agree that when your system goes down, again, because we are so dependable or dependent on it,
Hmm.
that in moments of crisis, when we have processes in place and our team is properly trained on the how to and what that flow looks like, it allows them to truly focus on troubleshooting as opposed to having to focus on how do I fix the problem? You're really giving
Yep.
them the answer to the test. So the level of the emotional engagement with the crisis goes down. So we better prepare a team to deal with those situations so that they don't have to be scrambling and trying to figure out how am I going to fix this, or trying one thing that perhaps is not the right solution. You want to make them feel empowered by providing them with the right tools. Now they can take that crisis to the finish line in a more flawless way, where not only their level of stress goes down, but also the operation gets affected in the least possible way.
Absolutely. And you also too, you want to look at, you think of just one of the systems or one of the pieces of technology, but then also too, how is this connected with other systems or other pieces, and even other departments, that, is there now going to be a domino effect as well, to making sure that now we're looking into that with the proper training and the steps of service communication of how this could affect others too.
Yeah. Stephanie, do you have any tips on how can our teams how can our leaders out there who are writing these policies and these procedures, how can they be more proactive? Is there a good time
Absolutely.
of the year where they should be preparing for this? Or, I mean, how should they be looking at this? If you have no processes in place at the moment, then when is it a good
Hmm.
time to, write this up,
Yeah.
right? And train your team and put them through the ringer when it comes to being fully prepared to handle that type of crisis of the system going down. What do you think?
Yes. I think so. One is making sure that all of your shifts, so not just focusing on saying your AM shift or your PM shift or your overnight shift, but you need to making sure that all three shifts are fully aware of the steps of process, what the proper procedures are, who they needed to be communicate to first, to alerting, to seeing if there's anyone else that needs to be alerted about things now start maybe looking a little bit wonky or getting pop-up alerts that they've never seen before, instead of just being like, oh, I'm just going to hit okay and now the system's back to normal, I'm not going to say anything. And then all of a sudden, a few days later, we're starting to see more alerts or error messages, and then all of a sudden everyone's like, oh, has this been happening? And you're like, yeah. Well, where were you saying anything? So we want to making sure that you're communicating with all of your shifts, and especially too on the overnight, because it's already a skeleton crew, and it's not like, oh, let me just call my manager or text them, they're probably sleeping. So really, making sure that they're feeling the support if anything was to go down, or if there happens to be a glitch, what can they do to making sure that they're feeling the support as well and following the proper protocols. The other thing I would also to recommend is working with your vendors also too. I've seen, do they already have a standard procedures, and being able to even having them come in and doing training, so then they fully understand. It's not just training with saying your IT department, but then also to making sure for the line level, it's just like for housekeeping, we have the whoever's providing the chemicals, they're come in and they'll do the training on of how many sprays should be properly for cleaning the shower. But look at it that way, still with your systems and technology of having your vendors coming in and really being able to showing some tips and tricks, but then also to how they would also to want to be communicated if they are seeing there are some system failures that are happening. So then they also too feel like they're getting that inside of knowledge. And then the last thing I recommend too is setting it up on your calendar and quizzing your team as well, to being like, okay, if something was to happen with a certain system, and now, okay, it's going to happen at say 9 a.m., what is your going to be your procedure. So this way also too, you're quizzing the team, so then it gives an opportunity to being able to talk about it, to seeing where training needs to be focused on, and then also too where your team, you're feeling like, okay, they got this, I have the confidence in my team, now we can move on to something else to being able to discuss. But you want to making sure that you're having it on your calendar to being able to test the team.
I love that. So let me review. Number one, step one, we want to make sure that there is a flow on paper, that the team knows what step one through whatever looks like. Number
Yes.
two, understanding what the chain of command is, right? Not only from who can support me through this process, but also who needs to be aware that this is currently happening.
Yes.
Number three, teaming up with your vendors to ensure they not only provide that service training and ways of teaching our team how to troubleshoot when situations like that happen, but then also uh, understanding who do I reach out to when there's a glitch or when there is abnormal activity that could potentially prevent this from happening, if that's an option. And then
Mhm.
finally setting a reminder. I love that final nugget, because once again, for especially for smaller properties or smaller operations, there is so much going on
Yes.
and you don't have as many resources. So there is no perhaps compliance department or a person that will be behind making sure that we are shooting out to learning management systems for those team
Mhm.
members, what those quizzes are, or a quick video. So it's a more manual process that requires for you to stay on top of that. Something that I love using on the HR side is having a matrix, having that grid that will tell you this is what we need to teach, this is who needs to go through it, and this is how
Mhm.
often. So that will
Yes.
always keep things in check. And it can be as simple as an Excel spreadsheet, or as robust as a platform that will actually alert you via notification and push the training over to your team members. And then from the HR standpoint, you're able to track who has gone through it, check some of those boxes, and so on. So when you do your audits, you know where you're standing and you have a good grip on the operation. I think that we can never really, it's hard to determine when a system will go down, right? If that
Mhm.
was the
Mhm.
case, it would be easier. There's times where we do planning for it, because there has to be an update that goes on or whatever the case may be. And then that allows us to push through it in a more promptly manner, and it allows us to push through it in a more organized way. But it's important to know in times of crisis, how do I minimize the risk, elevate our game, and lower the stress?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And especially to lowering the stress because, it could have been the simplest thing as you're out in the restaurant and the credit card machine goes down for the server. And then they get all frustrated and then they're like, what's this big chunk of metal that I have to doing the scanning of the credit card? And it's too, even with the young emerging leaders, it may have been the first time that they're seeing this big wonky item to scanning taking the imprints of the credit cards. And even that, here they're having a full section of their restaurant and now having to take that extra time to taking that imprint and then communicating to the guest that also too. But yeah, making sure they're feeling that support, and not just focusing, oh, we're just going to go with the main departments, but there's every department in some way has some kind of system or technology that is attached to their department. So you want to making sure that you're looking at everything from A to Z.
I love that. And I think that also, in an effort for us to cater this conversation to those executives who may be on the other side listening in, or watching on YouTube, I think that is important to, um, as we go through the motion of having people write these policies and having people enforce these policies, from the perspective of making sure the team is prepared for something like this, is looking at the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the potential for lost revenue that can come from a system or a piece of technology going down, right? So I think that we gain a lot more awareness when we see the bigger picture and how that can affect everything that you're doing from a budgetary standpoint, right? And how do you
Yeah.
recover from that? And then I think that it would open up to a whole new episode to see the aftermath, right? How do we recover from a system going down, and what that looks like from a numbers perspective as to how do we dig ourselves out of here. And there's times that we have that contingency plan in place, and there is times that we don't,
Yep.
right? So again, I think that's a whole new episode for that. So let's take a deep dive into your WTF moment.
I mean, the WTF moment I'm still going to bring up is we've seen it for years of, so an email comes and it even says suspicious spam. The alert saying even don't click on the link. But then someone clicks on the link. And now we're all frozen out of our emails, whether it be by the hotel or the brand or the area of the city or something. But like, it's just crazy is that it's still people are still clicking on those suspicious links no matter how much alert that they're getting, someone still clicks on it.
Stop clicking on the silly link.
Yes,
I love that.
exactly. Yes. I mean, and also too, with other WTF moments, especially being here in Florida with hurricanes and really bad lightning storms. There's so many times too that we've had where the power has gone off and then our generator hasn't kicked on right away. And here we are now really working in the Stone Age without any power.
That is true. That is true. Absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And then the last
Lovely.
thing, of just as a final nugget is,
Yes. Final nugget, please.
really just, it goes with check yourself before you wreck yourself. So really making sure that you have these policies and procedures, these trainings in place, and also to make it into a group effort with your team and saying, okay, if you were to write the SOP for the new employee that could be hired next week, how would it be able for them to being able to fully understand what needs to be done if it was to happen on, say, their, second or third day in their department, and they're already knowing where they would find the information, so then they could be able to handle it.
I love your golden nugget, Stephanie. If there is something that COVID has taught many, many resorts is work on your SOPs before the crisis comes to you.
Yeah.
I remember having plenty of conversations throughout 2020 with colleagues that were like, yeah, we have to write our processes of cleanliness and sanitization. And I'm like, did you not have that in place already? Right? No judgment, but
Yeah.
so
Yes.
this is no different, right? Don't wait until your system goes down to figure it out. Just start
Yeah.
working on it now. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Perfect. All right.
Love
Well,
it.
Nyla, fun episode, giving some insight information, and thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you for your insight.